What's happening, everybody? Mediocre people of YouTube. Let me go around the other side. It's getting ready to take off here, but I want to get into it quick here with you guys. Pretty sad day for our country today, and really just fucking nuts. And I'll get into it, but of course, as many of you probably know, yesterday Charlie Kirk was murdered. Cowardly murdered. Let me preface this a little bit, because I was aware of Charlie Kirk. I knew the name, but only recently, and I say recently, within the last 5 days or so, had I been actually looking at some of his content on YouTube. Otherwise, I would not have known who he was if I saw his face, right? So that tells you where I'm coming from. I'm not a fanboy or anything else. I just, I'm looking at somebody that I just, like I said, I've known the name, but I've just kind of become aware of recently. And dude was shot and killed, by another angry, violent liberal. And these people are angry and violent. I've been telling you guys that. He was shot and killed because you don't agree with his viewpoints. I mean, it goes too far, right? It's one thing that you're estranged from a family member because they don't, because they're a liberal and they cannot handle any viewpoint outside of their own. That's one thing, to be estranged from a family member, but to murder a person in cold blood, a 31-year-old young man with a beautiful family in his prime, doing his thing. This is what he does, right? And he gets killed. And then, of course, you've got the same people who, when President Trump was his attempted assassination, the same people who were talking, oh yeah, it's just a Trump hoax. I mean, are you kidding me? Yeah. Hey, listen, I want you to I want to do an attempted assassination, but just hit me in the ear. Just pierce my ear, right? Don't make sure you don't hit me in the head. I mean, how fucking stupid do you have to be? But they are. There really is people that fucking dumb, in our communities. And now, this brilliant young guy is killed yesterday. And he was brilliant. He could debate with the best of them. Whether you subscribe to his viewpoints or not, or whether you disliked him or whatever, or maybe you didn't even know, like me. I mean, I kind of barely even knew who he was. I knew the name, but I didn't know what it was he did. I didn't know whether he had a radio show or a podcast, or I didn't know what he did up until a few days ago. And I was watching some of his stuff, and I really liked it. I said, wow, this is a great argument. This stuff, man, it really is. Ooh, can I squeeze this beast in here? I bet you I could, but do I want to? Is going to be the question. Yes, I do want to. So y'all are going to have to watch your ass, because I'm backing up. So we will get back into this in a second. I got to drop something at the up store. But I mean, it really just incredible. A brilliant young man gunned down because we disagree with your viewpoints, so therefore you should die, right? So that kind of brings me to the video I was going to make before all this happened, which was I wanted to talk about the stabbing on the train of this Ukrainian refugee. I don't know if a refugee, because she actually has a country she comes from. Refugees are, I believe refugees in general basically don't have a country, right? So she has a country, but she fled because obviously it's very dangerous over there. So Ukrainian girl coming on her way home from work, and she gets stabbed to death by a guy who happens to be black. She happens to be white. And here's what the media is not telling you. And you can believe it, me, or you can not believe me, but this is the truth because I watched the actual footage. Here's what the media has not said. No one. What did the man say after he stabbed her to death? What did he say? Got me a white girl. Now, it's been a few days since that happened. I live in a predominantly white community, and there's no fires, there's no riots, there's no problem, right? I suggest to you that had the racial roles been reversed, perhaps communities would be burning right now, because that is the world we live in, and that has to stop. Burning down your community because of a racial crime does not solve anything. And yes, obviously it was, at least in part, racially motivated, right? Right after he stabbed her, he said, I got me a white girl. He brought race into it, not me. So what does that mean, right? So I don't know, but I'll tell you what, man, I saw the footage of that video, the actual footage and the lengthier footage of it, and just terrible, man, just terrible. She didn't know what happened to her. She had no idea. She had known she was it looked like she knew she obviously knew she was attacked, but she didn't know what happened to her because she was like, you know, she kind of hunched up, and he just walked away, and she looked around like, did anybody see that or whatever, maybe, and then maybe at some point she realized, and then all of a sudden she just collapsed. So that was really, it was bad, man. But you know, I don't encourage anyone to go watch this stuff, but I don't think it should be censored from the public if you do want to watch if you do want to see what actually happened, because it shouldn't be censored. YouTube and Google should not. The people have the right to see how violent this stuff is, you know. As far as the Charlie Kirk footage, you know, it looks like you got some footage from a couple of different angles, and you know, people started getting the hell out of there. I mean, I think people were afraid that there was going to be, you know, more shootings or something, which obviously that wasn't the case. That it was obviously politically motivated. It was obvious that, you know, the guy, because if he wanted to go on a shooting spree, he could have shot everybody in the audience, but he would have shot a bunch of liberals, right? Because that's what Charlie Kirk always does. He goes and debates liberals and proves them wrong pretty much on every single point, every single time. And, you know, hey, that's a shame, man. I really hate to hear that. I hate that happened, but that is terrible. And, you know, and if the shoe were on the other foot and it was a Democrat that goes and does that and actually I would be saying the same thing. Okay, I don't know any Democrats that do that type of thing. The only Democrats and liberals that I know of are the ones that whine and bitch and complain about everything, and the ones that are extremely angry and violent. And I think it's probably about 80-20. 80% of them are angry to the point where you could see how they could commit violence very easily. they also bitch and complain about everything. You know, the whole world's against them. You know, everything was designed against them. You know, I just don't understand people who believe that they can't change their lives. You know, I listened to a guy, it might have been on one of Charlie Kirk's videos. This guy claims that he's applied for 400, no, it was PBD was doing a thing, 20 anti-capitalist and PBD. And this guy claimed that in the last year he'd applied to like over 400 jobs and not one call. Like, dude, how does that happen? Something's wrong, and it's not the jobs. Something's wrong with you at that point. Like, if I were to go out and apply for 3 or 4 jobs and I didn't get one single call back from 3 or 4 jobs, I would certainly reconsider my position, okay? And maybe I'm the problem. This guy claims I think it was over 400 jobs, might have been more. And he claims not one callback. And actually, PBD actually offered him a job. He said, would you relocate? And of course, the guy, and you could see very quickly, PBD actually took his offer off the table because he said, you know what, you're going to be difficult to work with. I can see that. So never mind, I take my offer off the table. Listen, when you're looking for a job, and especially as a young man, a young person, woman, man, doesn't matter, with basically no life experience, you don't really have much to offer. You don't really have status. You don't have, there's a lot of things that you don't have, so you can't be very picky. Now, if you went to, Harvard and graduated Harvard Law, top of your class, and then came out of that with no experience, you actually still have leverage. Even though you have no life experience and no real law experience, your academics speak for themselves. I'm not talking about a fucking degree in sociology, right? I'm talking about a degree in something that you can use. So the rest of this guy was a truck driver, and he, very young, obviously, however long he'd been doing it wasn't very long because he was, 22, 23 years old, something like that. So you don't really, you have your experience and you can say, I've done this and I've done that, and la-da-da. But you need to understand that, most trucking companies that are looking to hire people, they've been around a long time. They've seen a lot of different people. Like myself, I've dealt with, and I'm blessed because I'm very good at dealing with lots of different personalities. That's what I do every day. I deal with different people every day. Different people, different status, different everything. And I manage to get along with all of them. Every once in a while there's a shithead, or maybe I'm the shithead. I don't know, but once in a while that happens. So these trucking companies, that this guy's applying to, they've seen it all. So if they can tell by your application that you're going to be a pain in the ass, I mean, you've got problems, dude, because that's speaking on an application for you. If you're not even getting a call back, then obviously it speaks out on your application that you're going to be a pain in the ass to work with. So you need to reevaluate your situation. And back to what I was getting at is that there's so many people out there, and I don't care how old you are or how young you are, that truly believe that they cannot change their situation. I see it again, and I'm sorry, but it seems to be liberals every time. They're very low on the socioeconomic status, and they don't believe that they can get out of it. They don't believe that, working hard and at least trying. They don't even believe just trying. Just give it a try. If it doesn't work, then I guess it doesn't work. But they're not even willing to try. Okay? And that is disturbing on all kinds of levels. Look, in this country, you've got so much that you can do and work with. Look, it's the only country in the world people are they're coming here, and they keep coming here, and they keep coming here because they want a better life. They're not going to other countries. I gotta pause you for a second again. Good. I'm glad you guys hung around. So, I'm sure whatever I was talking about had to do with Charlie Kirk or whatever. So yeah, man, this shit, man. That's gotta stop. You know, that is just crazy to me that happened. And I know I'm trying to get back on track here. I just stopped to do a little business here and then get back with you guys. So I got to get my mind back in the game. What I was talking about with you guys. There's been some Detroit stuff too that I've been watching, which is just unbelievable. You know, look, if you've never been to the city that you're talking about, you should probably shut the fuck up about it, right? And I'm talking about YouTube channels that make videos commenting on the neighborhoods in Detroit that they've never visited. Okay, and it was talking about how shitty they were, but they have no idea what they're talking about, because the neighborhoods they were talking about were way shittier than what they were even talking about, and they were ripping on Detroit. And I don't really care if you rip on Detroit, because Detroit should be ripped on. Okay, it's a disgrace what has happened to the city of Detroit. So, you know, as far as people ripping on Detroit, I got no problem with that. I think the more attention Detroit gets, whether it's negative or positive, will hopefully bring somebody in to finally fix it. You know, it all started with Mayor Coleman Young, who was the first black mayor of the city of Detroit, maybe one of the first black mayors in the country. I don't remember. I was very young when he was in office. But Mayor Young understood that he came up with a formula where he could rob from the city and fill his own pockets. But Mayor Young also understood that if you're going to do that, you better damn well take care of the people in the city that you're mayor of. So a lot of people, when they talk about Mayor Coleman Young, many times the conversation goes towards race, which it really shouldn't, doesn't really matter. But when they talk about how Coleman Young was a good mayor, what they're talking about is, you know, he broke a piece off for everyone in the city. You know, whether it was you were working, that reminded me what I was talking about. You know, whether it was you were working or whatever. And that's where Kwame Kilpatrick, the next mayor, lost, because he just took everything, didn't leave anything for anyone. And he lost the people. And, you know, then he was convicted of several felonies, went to prison. He was pardoned by your president and mine, President Trump, who should have never been pardoned. And if I had President Trump in a room and I could speak on that with him, I would say to President Trump, that was a stupid decision made by an otherwise seemingly smart man, because Kwame Kilpatrick did not deserve to be let out of prison. But now let me get back to what I was talking about. And what I'm talking about is people who believe that they cannot better themselves. And I'm not talking about people who, man, they've been busting their ass their entire life, and they just, man, luck is just not on their side, you know. I'm not talking about those people. But I am talking about anyone who wants more out of life, okay? You know, if you want to make more money, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, how can I increase my value? And doesn't matter what trade you're going into, doesn't matter what you want to do. You can do whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. You can pick whatever you want to do. You can work for somebody, you can open a business, but the first thing you have to ask yourself is, you know, how do I increase my value? Because you want to make more money, right? In order for you to make more money, you have to increase your own value to whatever trade you are focused on. Whether it's a degree, many times it's, you know, many companies will give you, $10,000 raise for finishing up that degree. Many companies will pay for your college to get that degree. Okay? Other times, it's learning. Flat out learning a trade, learning something new. And you're starting at the bottom again, but maybe you're doing what you've always wanted to do. So this time you're really going to focus and you put a business plan together. I'll tell you guys a little secret about me, okay? And somebody else taught me how to do this, and I've been doing it ever since, for at least the last 5 years or so. Right around the first of the year, I take time to sit down and write out a business plan for my life. And it's everything. I write out my goals for the next year, the next 365 days, and my goals for this, and my business plan for my life. Because, your life is a business. You have to run the business of your life. So, and everything counts, whether it's, paying, I want to make sure I get this credit card paid off by such and such a date, or I want to make sure I get this loan paid off by such and such a date, or I'm going to take a loan in order to increase the value of the business so that we can do more business, or pay an employee, or whatever it is. That has helped me tremendously as far as getting ahead and going closer to the place that I want to be in life. Okay? Which eventually, and not too long from now, in the grand scheme of things, not too far from now, I would eventually like to be in a position where, I'm on the fence about this, because I want to be in a position where, I guess, I'm really on the fence, as you can tell. I'm not sure exactly. I'm sure about what I want, but as far as the business is concerned, I'm not sure what I want to do. Because, eventually you get to that place that, you wanted to be and you reach your goals, and it's either, well, we could either keep the business going if I can find somebody good to run it and, not really be involved, other than the finances and all the, just kind of background, or we could sell it, and I'm not sure, at what point, I'll want to sell it out, but, because I really love what I do, I really do. I'm really enjoying myself for the first time in my life, and this is really retirement, right? Because, I did my time in working for the other guy in the demolition business, and I decided enough is enough. I'm retiring from that business, and I did, and so, but I did not see what I'm doing now. I did not see that coming. But as it turns out, I've loved it all my life. I've been a part of it all my life. I'm very knowledgeable about it. So it really worked out great. And so I do a business plan for my business, and then I do a business plan for my life, and I set my goals for the year, and then I go back in about every 3 months and I revisit it, read through it to make sure I'm on track with the things that I said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to make sure I didn't forget about this, make sure, am I putting this off? Am I, because, look, when it comes to procrastination, we all procrastinate, and it's very easy to do that, and procrastination is not a good thing, people. Procrastination is not a good thing, because I could be gone. You guys could witness my death right now, So don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. This is not a dress rehearsal. I'm sure Mr. Charlie Kirk and his wife and beautiful children going to do what they normally do after he does one of those debates, whether it was go to dinner, you know. We all take for granted that, that's what, what's going to be. But none of us know how long we have left. So, I'll suggest to you right now that if you're miserable with your life and your job, I would suggest to you quit. If you're not happy with your life, and there's somewhere else you want to be in life, and you're not there, go get there, man. Listen, it'll all fall into place. When you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it'll all fall into place. And it will be like, it's just another day. It's not, going to work. It's another day. You love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right? That could not be more true. There's a lot of people that are happy working for the other guy. I was relatively happy working for the other guy for a long time. But, at some point, the words of Ray Scully rang true when he told me in the beginning that, Mike, you're never going to make the type of money that you want to make working for the other guy. And Ray was a farmer. So he had a business and a farm, legitimate farm that he ran. He was also in the wrecking. I don't know, he spent most of his life here in Michigan, where he had actually a couple of different farms in Indiana. One was a tobacco farm, which he did for years and years and years. And lo and behold, R.J. Reynolds came along and bought him out. And then he took that money and bought a few more 1,000 more acres. And now, this is many years ago, but he told me he was doing soybeans and dairy. That was the only thing that was making money in the farming industry. Which is a damn shame. We have lots of people to feed in this country, man. Lots of people to feed. And we've got lots of land. And we have lots of farmers. And it's a shame that the farmers that we have that are left, if it wasn't for the government subsidy they get, they would never make it. That's criminal, because these farmers, they're doing what they love. They're doing what they love to do. That's why they continue to do it and basically break even. So yeah, when considering what to do with yourself or for yourself, you also need to consider, the business you're contemplating on getting in. Whether it's your own business or you're going to work for somebody else. You need to contemplate the marketplace and if there is a market for what you're thinking, or if you're going into it and you already know there's a market for it and you're talking about working for a company, you have to see what they're willing to, do. And I'm not talking about being picky on your application. You can do lots of research now online to see how companies have promoted and what they've done for employees who have bettered themselves. Like I said in the beginning of this, you have to increase your value in order to be. The more valuable you are, the more money you can demand. You can, but when you're a 22-year-old kid, you really don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to that. Now, do you need to, make a wage that, you can live on and pay your rent? Absolutely. Now, if you live in a place like California where it's just, they just keep raising the wages and raising the cost of everything else. Another YouTube buddy of mine, he told me the other day, he actually put it on video. McDonald's. Sausage McMuffin and a coffee, $11. And there wasn't even a person there to take his order. He had to use a kiosk then. Coffee and a sausage McMuffin, $11. So you live in a place like California, you should probably consider leaving there. You know, I hate to say it, I hate for you to have to leave your family and all that, but sometimes, you know, it's a different story if you can afford it, but maybe you're just starting off. Let me say it like this. California is not the place to start a business right now. If this next mayor that they're pushing for New York, or I guess I think he's a mayor, if he gets in, New York is not the place to start a business right now. In fact, you're going to see a lot of businesses leaving the state of New York, leaving the city of New York specifically, but the entire state. Maybe he's running for governor, I can't remember. But it's another one of those, you know, liberal lunatics that, you know, he's going to fix everything by bringing communism in, basically. Anyway, I hope that, you know, some of the things, I know I got on a roll here, and I really didn't want to go there. I really wanted to talk more about what happened with Charlie Kirk and the girl in on the train there. But I hope, you know, it can inspire you, you know, that as you guys can probably see just by, I get excited just talking about it, you know. Change my life, change the way I look at things. Just by, you know, doing things to increase my own value, and changing the way I look at things, changing the way I approach things, you know. You know, not that I ever had the victim mentality, but many of these liberals I talk about, that's where they're coming from. They all claim to be victims of society. There's just there's nothing they can do. All they can do is be poor. I work 5 jobs and I'm poor. If you're working 5 jobs and you're poor, the problem is you, okay? Because no one should be working 5 jobs and being poor. There's no way. So you need to change your occupation, because obviously you want to, you know, at least be able to pay your bills, and you're working 5 different jobs and you're impoverished. The problem isn't the jobs that you have. Well, it is partially, but the bigger problem is you. You know, you should value yourself the way you value whatever you value the most, okay? You know, in Christianity and Islam, you would say you should value yourself the way God values you. You know, the way you value God, you should value yourself. You know? You're worth something, right? You're worth it. Why aren't you worth it? You know? Because as hard as you may try, unless you've got a serious disability, you're not a victim. You're a victim of your own mind and circumstances. Anyway, I gotta get to it here. Chugging down the Red Bull. Got the coffee cup. This is my old coffee cup. Not that you guys give a shit about any of this, so fuck off. Until next time. Peace out. Oh, God.